nice about Blasdell and being part of the community is that everyone does go out of the way to help each other.
Blasdell it's such a wonderful community. Everything you could dream of, that little American, what they say, that village of America, that dream, that was Blasdell.
I was always happy there. The neighbors were all great. Everybody looked out for each other.
It was 1870-something. The Erie Railroad was in its prime. A small depot was built as the crossover of the Erie and Pennsylvania railroads. The first station master for this depot was a man by the name of Herman Blasdell. The area Herman found himself in had no name and very few residents, so Herman received permission from the United States government to establish a post office and decided to give the area his own name. Legend has it that while others debated what to name the village, Herman quietly hung the Blasdell sign on the train station. By the early 1890s, Blasdell had grown and the land was divided into the streets and lots as they are now. In 1898, Blasdell officially became a village, electing James Stutz as the first mayor. Today, over 100 years later, Blasdell, New York has been affectionately nicknamed 1 square mile of heaven by the countless people who grew up here and called this place home over the years.
I'm Marty Miller. I grew up at 134 Lake Avenue, and when I was about 8 years old, my parents bought a house on Orchard Avenue, and I'm still living there today. My grandparents, had lived in Blasdell, and my mother grew up in Blasdell Woodlawn area. There used to be a street off of Lake Avenue, halfway between the village and halfway between Lake Shore Road, called Seneca Street, and that's where my mother grew up, and she graduated from Woodlawn High School, because at that time Woodlawn had a high school.
My name is Bonnie Pristash Gordon. I grew up, I started off on Arthur Avenue, and then when I was 8, we made the big move 2 blocks away here to Merriam, and moved out of Blasdell for a couple years, but then ended up coming back here, and my husband and I bought a house over on Miller, and we've been there for almost 12 years now. My mom grew up in Blasdell. Her and her family were from here, so they went to school here. So my elementary school, we actually had 3 different elementary schools, which seemed a little strange, but we did Blasdell Elementary, then we went to the Annex for a couple years, then Woodlawn, and then back to Blasdell Elementary for 6th grade graduation. So the Annex was the junior high when my mom was here, and now it's actually a senior citizens home in the middle of the village. So interesting, the transitions the village has taken since I grew up here.
My name is Howard Lee, and I grew up in Blasdell. And when I was 18 years old, I was drafted into the service. I went 2.5 years during the war. I was in the Marine Corps. That was in 1940. When I came home from the war, I raised my family. I raised my family in Blasdell. I used to work at Old Dutch. Old Dutch was a peanut factory. They used to make peanut butter, and I used to make peanut butter there.
Hi, my name's Todora Dobrova. I grew up on McGurk Avenue in Blasdell. We moved there in 1974. My parents were immigrants, so they both came from 2 different countries, and they moved to Blasdell because my father worked at the Ford plant, and he needed to walk to work because he couldn't drive. So that's why we moved to Blasdell, because it was an easy walk for him to get to work.
Hi, I'm Dennis DiPaolo, owner of Ilio DiPaolo's Restaurant. We opened up a restaurant here. Actually, my father opened up and my mother opened up the restaurant in 1965, January 3rd, here in the beautiful little village of Blasdell, which is very comparable to the village of Interdacqua, which is my father's hometown in Italy. My father started out, first restaurant we had actually burned down in Lackawanna, New York in 1963. Then a man, George Taylor, came forth here in Blasdell, was building homes right over by our Mother Good Council, and he came into my father and said, Ilio, do you want to get back in the restaurant business? So when Mr. Taylor made him the offer to come over and start building a restaurant, and the blessing of angels here in Blasdell is remarkable, because it started out, Mr. Taylor said, well, my father said, look, we live in a trailer park in Lackawanna, we have a Cadillac, that's all I have. He said, Ilio, don't worry about it. Once you open up, then you can start paying me. Pretty remarkable how in the little village of Blasdell, this whole community came together to help get my father started in fulfilling his lifelong dream. Actually, our whole family is very blessed, and my son has decided to take on the reins and take it to a third generation, which is very rare in our industry. I believe it's only 2%. Yeah, you look back and the beautiful memories you had with my father running around and myself, and that my son will then have. But it's a great opportunity for all of us. His love of Blasdell and his love of this community, he realizes how important it is. He gets a lot of offers to move out and try different venues and other locations. But like my father said, it's still to this day, Blasdell is a special little community that have been very loyal to us, and we've done everything we can to try to get back to our beautiful community and keep it that way. So we remain to stay here, and into the foreseeable future, Ilio DePaulo's will be a part of Blasdell.
One of the most interesting things I always remember from growing up there in the 50s and 60s was all of the businesses on Lake Avenue. All up and down Lake Avenue, from the railroad tracks all the way up to South Park. I mean, there was just stores of every single kind. So, I mean, you could do anything and everything that you wanted within walking distance on Lake Avenue. You never really had to leave the village if you had to buy something. Of course, most of them are all gone now, but there was Mom and Tots that sold primarily children's clothing. At the corner of LaBelle and Lake, there was a men's shop where you could go and buy hats and suits and things like that. There was a hardware store where the empty lot is now, across from Electric Avenue, and of course Carlin's.
Carlin's,
oh my gosh, Carlin's was huge. Carlin's was the corner store right down the street from us, and my brother worked there for a little bit when we were kids. Carlin's was just the, great corner store where you went and got all your stuff. Mom sent you to the store all the time. But they also had, I'll never forget, they had ice cream sandwiches, but they were homemade ice cream sandwiches. It was like wafers that were like the ice cream cones. It was like made out of cone. And then they actually cut the ice cream and put it in between the two wafers. And those were awesome.
We always used to go to the corner store and get candies. They used to have little baskets of candies.
I always enjoyed all the activities and that they had at the two playgrounds. Every day was a different theme. There was many different things where we would go out to Frontier Central, for activities. They had day camps.
The playgrounds were awesome. We had two main playgrounds, and we just spent most of our time there. There were, arts and crafts and always different contests. I remember being in the newspaper, so many times. It was so cool when you were a kid to see your face in the local newspaper. The front page, Blasdell front page, was the paper when we were kids, or the Hamburg Sun was even bigger. It was really cool when you got to be in the Sun. Then, bring your favorite stuffed animal or bring your dog. They did face painting. Boondoggle was huge. We loved our arts and crafts lady at the playground, and they did field trips. So that was super cool. All the neighborhood got to go. To the zoo and to Crystal Beach and Darien Lake and all those kinds of fun places.
There were a lot of kids on many of the streets, and a lot of us were probably within a 5 to 7 to 8 year range where everybody just knew each other. So it was pretty good because there were tons of kids and we all used to play and stuff. It was fun.
All of us had older siblings, so there was kind of like the, older siblings that were 4 or 5 years older than us, and then the younger sibling group. And we used to try to get the older siblings, to take us places, because JFK was the cooler playground, but it was too far for us. So we went to Silver Street. There was a place that was called Duke's Deli, and when you got to go to Duke's, that was huge. Like when you got one of the older kids to take you down there, because it was a store that was just awesome. It had like the penny candy, and you could get, your 10-cent now and laters and your gobstoppers and all that good stuff. So that was a real treat when we got to go to Duke's and got to go to JFK. Everyone just hung out with everybody, and it was a lot of fun. It was just a really, really fun place to grow up.
One of the highlights here in Blasdell, my father first came to Blasdell, was the Knights of St. John's, our Mother of Good Counsel, which is our church here, and they've been very good to us. And I remember as a child, 10 years old, they'd come in after the meetings and go Ilio, and pizza was just the up-and-coming thing in the 60s. So they come in, we had pizza, and my father, he'd go making the pizza, he'd put a case of beer on the table for the guys, and he'd go, Danny's, go to pick out a booth and you can get a nap now, get some sleep, So I'd be sleeping in the booth while they'd stay and have their beers and pizza and have fun. And to this day, the Knights of St. John, we just celebrated Father's Day together, and what a remarkable to see their generations, their family, all growing up with the same thing. It's just it's a beautiful part of our community, Knights of St. John's and our church.
Oh, my favorite memory in Blasdell was they used to have a drive-in theater. We used to go and watch in the evening.
The Star Drive-In on Lake Avenue, where right behind the elementary school, and myself and 3-4 of my friends many times went up to the elementary school, went to the back. There was a hole in the fence underneath. We would crawl underneath the fence to go to the drive-in, because the Star Drive-In had a really nice patio with chairs and that on it. And we would watch the movie and buy our concessions. And in all the times that I did it, nobody ever said a word, nobody ever caught us. It was, I don't want to say an accepted fact that people did that, but we got away with it.
Being part of the Blasdell community is important to me because I grew up here and I know what a great place it's always been. I feel like it's always been a safe neighborhood, a great place to raise kids. It's definitely a sense of family here, a sense of community.
There's one thing that I really like about Blasdell is people do come together. People definitely come together and help each other out. All the neighbors are nice. If somebody's pregnant and they can't mow the lawn because their husband works out of town or something, we always jump in and help each other. So I think that what's really nice about Blasdell and being part of the community is that everyone does go out of the way to help each other.
It's always been neighbor helping neighbor, and I think you don't see that as much these days. So it's kind of nice to be in a place where you know that that's still happening. We know our neighbors, we know who they are, we know what everybody's, I don't want to say everybody's business, but you kind of do. Like, when, a family has a new member or somebody gets married or somebody has a baby, you go out of your way and say congratulations, and, new neighbors move in and you welcome them. It's that kind of community, and they do community events, which is great. Wednesday nights, they do concerts at the playground. And that's one of the greatest things. I mean, hundreds of people come out from the neighborhood and just hang out with each other on a Wednesday night to watch a concert.
Well, I think the one biggest thing that I've noticed in that growing up in Blasdell is how there's many families that have a long history of living just in Blasdell. You can say, all you have to do is say the names, and people know them. And because of that, if you were ever in any kind of need, there's people who would immediately come to your assistance.
Being a member of the Blasdell community is it's just a wonderful experience. It's all about family. The families have grown up here, the Bushens and the Russells, and there's so many families that I've grown up with here that have been the Norton, the Hortons, and everybody else. Just the Gregories. I mean, you can go on and on. Blasdell is just like, it's everything you could dream of. That little American, what they say, that village of America, that dream, that was Blasdell. I mean, it really, and it still remains that way, although things have gotten a lot busier and different things. Things have changed in our community, but it still remains that core network of good people that make this place run, and we're very blessed to have great leadership in our village and great people that care.
I'm very proud of Blasdell. Yeah, that was a nice place to raise a family.